Thank you so much, Ewan. This is obviously a very difficult subject to broach, but I'm going to ask you at home now to ask yourself a very real, deep and meaningful question. If you have any fears, even the slightest fear that you might be in a relationship with someone who could be potentially violent with you or manipulative in a way that could be abusive, please listen very carefully. We've seen so much in the media lately, obviously for obvious reasons, about psychopathic and sociopathic tendencies. There is a massive surge in literature available on the subject. The net is awash with it. We thought this is time now to cut through the clutter and get down to the heart of the matter. And I'm very privileged to have Dr. Abraham Leroux, our regular psychologist on the show. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us. I suppose we have to be thankful that there is this massive upswing in media attention around this, but we can't let it cloud the issue that there is a very strong reality here in South Africa that many people are in potentially violent, dangerous, murderous relationships. Now, I have to ask, first of all, psychopath and sociopath. Can you explain both of those terms to me quickly?
Yes, clinically speaking, if we look at the sociopath and the psychopath, they're actually part of a personality disturbance that we know as the antisocial personality disorder. So if you look at sociopath, they are actually part of a broader kind of category that includes roughly all kind of antisocial and criminal behavior, but is caused by environmental factors, like, for example, traumatized childhood, really abusive kind of experiences, especially in childhood. And then contrary to that, you get the psychopath that is part of a much smaller category that's actually a subcategory, but overlaps greatly with the sociopath. But for them, they are hereditary. So there's actually a genetic aspect at play.
I suppose the danger here is you are dealing with people who have been covering this up to the rest of the world to such a degree that they will be masters of manipulation, of making sure that even the person closest to them isn't aware of this.
Oh, definitely. They're absolutely, as you say, masters at camouflaging themselves well into society. So they are highly charming. You would not spot them. So they know human behavior very well, especially the psychopath I'm talking about now. And they would actually in a way, manipulate the environment that they always get their needs met. So that is what they will actually focus on the most.
So now, for someone who is in a relationship, it's very easy from the outside identifying traits that could be potentially abusive. We've all seen it. We've all seen it within friends of ours. We can identify that, but often the person in the relationship is unable to. Maybe they are too close to the issue. What are those tendencies of a psychopath where you can start to say, okay, this is an alarm bell. I need to take cognizance and do something about it?
Okay, there's definitely things that you can actually spot. Like, for example, if you look at the psychopath, they have a lack of empathy is one of the things that really stand out for them. They don't have a moral compass. They don't have a sense of, they don't feel guilt. They don't feel remorse. They don't feel any kind of concern for other people's well-being. And ultimately, if you dig deeper, you will actually see some of the kind of negative, like pathological lying. There would be fraudulent or violent behavior underneath it. But ultimately, if you look at the character, highly manipulative, they are sometimes superficially charming, but also the emotions are very superficial. They're cool, calm, and collected, and they will meticulously plan it. That's a psychopath. The sociopath is the more emotional, where there's impulse control. They can actually suddenly burst into rage and actually become dangerous.
I suppose the most important thing here is for someone who is identifying these traits, and maybe even it's just an intuition, what do they do? How does someone in a relationship like this, in a safe way that is going to protect them, how do they broach this? How do they get out? What is the first step? How do you counsel people in that regard?
Well, the whole thing is that I think it's very important that people don't run out and diagnose every single person, because I think that for that reason, if you're concerned, go and consult a professional so that you can get a kind of good idea what you're dealing with. But most important, don't provoke, don't threaten, don't actually just abandon or be in a impulse, because that could actually badly trigger a kind of a very bad response. So make sure that you know what you're dealing with and then get professional kind of advice how to deal with that.
Any last advice for someone who might be in that, in a relationship, they've started to feel those warning signs? What would you say to them?
Well, I think that one of the questions you ask yourself, if you see a partner consistently is actually dealing with his or her self-interest, with no regard for you or any other person, and you can see that there's a clear pattern of physical or financial or emotional abuse that is happening, then you should stand back and ask yourself what's happening here, and then you should start taking it further.
Doctor, thank you so much for your insights. Always incredibly rewarding. Please, at home, I ask you to ask yourself these questions. Go and seek professional help. I'm sure we're going to continue this discussion at length here on the show. Love to hear your thoughts as well. We're going to take a quick ad break.